No, it wasn't there before. That's new.
Forever updating. Love it.
Yeah. Well, and this whole Restream interface. Hi, everybody. We're live. So, yes. Hold on. Hi. If you're watching live, stick around with us. We're going to do a little pre-show, and then we got the actual show here at 5 Pacific, 8 Eastern. If you're watching later, we do have the full episode available for your convenience. It cuts out all this stuff. If you want to listen to this stuff, that's fine. Blake and I right now are talking about our tool that we use called Restream. And they just came out with an update that counts you down until you're live now. They didn't have that last week. Or I guess we weren't even on last week, so they may have had it last week. I don't know.
Maybe they did, but who knows? They didn't have it 2 weeks ago. Let's put it that way.
Yes, exactly. They did not have it 2 weeks ago. I feel like this music's a little loud. I'm going to bump it down. There we go.
It was nice. I was enjoying it. Bumping
Were you
it
jamming
before the show? Yeah. Actually, when we were just bantering back and forth, I was wondering, could I actually go play this on my drum set? And I think I could. But anyway,
this is the this doesn't sound very rock and metal to me, but this is the rock and metal royalty free mix.
That's great. It's like feels like, what do you call it? I don't know, like not Depeche Mode. What's the band? I can't think of the name.
It feels Depeche Mode-y to me.
Yeah, very like 80s-ish.
Yeah. Cure, maybe
rock.
A little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Cure. What in the hell is the band I'm thinking of? I don't know if it's like
Flock of Seagulls, maybe.
Flock of Seagulls is great. I think it might be Devo. I can't remember.
Okay, yeah, no, I can see some Devo in this too. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the pre-show to the show. Tonight we're going to be talking about this rudeness. And does it impact patient treatment? We're not going to be talking about that yet. That's what we're talking about tonight. So stick around. If you are joining us on any one of our platforms, we would greatly appreciate a like, a follow, all that stuff. That like tremendously helps out the algorithm. I hate begging for that stuff, but like seriously, it does help people find the show. In fact, a lot of new people have found the show recently, and so if you are a brand new listener, thank you, and we appreciate you hanging out with us, and
much,
especially the pre-show. That's fun. If you are listening and have something to say, please throw a comment in our chat. We'll be watching it as we go through tonight's episode. And wait, Blake, I see you in the notes. Go up.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this stuff's old, right?
No, that's all this
that's
week.
It?
Yep,
okay, it was just the title that was wrong then. Got it.
Yeah, title was wrong. I did pre-populate a lot of stuff in here, so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't get rid of all of it.
Yeah. Let's see.
Anyway, if you're watching with us, please drop a comment in the chat. Let us know if you found any news stories that you like and want us to know about. Let us know if you have any comments about the subject matter that we're talking about tonight. Let us know if you have any questions about the field of human factors. We'll try our best to answer those on the fly if we can. We do have a couple prepared questions. Dude, we have, for the first time, this is a first for us. I don't know if you saw this come through the YouTube channel. We did. Oh, hold on. What's going on? Yeah, we did get a YouTube comment that's a very good question, and I want to address it on tonight's show. So I don't have a whole lot of prep work to do with the "It Came From" section because, again, we got two really solid ones from our community. One being the YouTube community, and another one being Discord. And just to do a little sneak peek, those questions are. What should a student be doing with their last semester to better prepare themselves for the human factors field?
Oh, man, that's funny.
You laugh.
My immediate answer is not the answer I would give on the show, so that's good. Get the funny stuff out of my brain.
Well, why don't you answer that in the pre-show?
No. It's
okay.
Not safe for Human Factors Cast. How's that?
Is it because this is a family show and then...
No, this is because this is a professional show.
Got it.
Man.
Okay, yeah, we have professional reputations to uphold, I hear. Okay.
That's actually a really great question, though, because I feel like I didn't know the answer to that, and
Same.
I would have done stuff differently, I think.
Same. And then the second question we have, actually it was a couple weeks old, but because we didn't do a show last week, We're bringing it up on the show this week, but it's let's see here. I'm in school for engineering. Most of my internships have entirely been in UX. Seems that 99% of human factors jobs are in UX. What does the human factors field look like outside the digital web/mobile UX? They're in Canada, so they're looking for opportunities for engineering human factors jobs outside the defense and aerospace industries.
Oh,
what do those look like?
We got a place for you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's exciting. We'll talk about those questions. We'll give our answers on those. If you have any burning questions about the field of human factors, you know what? I'll even go as far as to say, if you have any burning questions for us, like in general, like what's your favorite ice cream flavor, or I don't know, what's
strawberry, in case you guys are too shy to ask. So there you go.
You know what? This is unpopular opinion time. I really like vanilla as a flavor.
You nerd.
Okay, but vanilla is actually a really complex flavor profile, and it's very good. And it pairs well with a lot of things. So
yeah,
take that.
In reality, I think vanilla is probably the best flavor because it like you just said, it can go with anything. You can put it on top of pie. You can eat it by itself.
It's the most ubiquitous flavor.
There we go.
Yeah. I will say, cookies and cream is a close second for me.
Oh my. Yeah. We start getting into those. I just go to the Ben & Jerry's fish food, which is just like diabetes in a small pint, but I love it so much. It's so good, but it makes me feel so bad. So bad. It's very tempting when Elise is not in town to not just get a bunch of Ben & Jerry's and binge on it.
I hear you.
But anyway.
Yeah. I see we have quite a few folks watching tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll be doing our regularly scheduled show here in about 20 minutes. This is where Blake and I put together the show notes, and obviously BS about ice cream and everything else.
Things. So Nick, I'm going to have to talk to myself through this one, so I'm going to mute for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and mute.
Hang out.
I can chat on my end here about... So, let's see here. I need to see if there's... Yeah, there is one more thing. I do have one more thing, yeah. So we can do that. Oh, shoot. I have a note for our lab that I need to make that I did not do. So I need to... Where can I put that? That's going to be... Speaking of the lab, if you are interested in helping out with the show, we have a lab that you can join. It's called Human Factors Has Digital Media Lab. And we have just a couple spots left. I think any more than that, it might get too busy unless, you have something very specific in mind. You can reach out to us. We do have a lot of exciting things in the works that we're not ready to share yet, but are very cool and I'm very excited about. So if you're interested in making something, if you're interested in, I don't want to say it this way, but padding your portfolio with tangible things that are out there in the ether, that are human factors related, please shoot us a email, chat, wherever. We're all over the place. Feel free to let us know, and we'll find something for you to do. Let's see here. I got a couple one more things. Blake, I know you're reading to yourself, so I'm going to keep stalling, but I'll ask you in a minute if you have a one more thing. Let's see. We got a lot of really good show notes tonight, so it'll be a good conversation, I think. Again, if you're just joining us, topic for tonight's show is going to be does rudeness impact patient? What did we call it? Does patient treatment? There it is. It's right on the thing that I'm looking. Yeah. Anyway, that is. Yes, good point. We do need audio editors. If you are interested in audio production and editing and that type of thing, we do have a place for you. So let us know. That's in terms of the lab. So let us know. Yes. So tonight we're talking about this patient treatment, and we'll get into it in the full show. But just to give you a little sneak peek, there's rudeness, there's anchoring bias, there's healthcare human factors. There's a lot of stuff going on. Lots of stuff that we can talk about. And I am realizing now that my notes are not complete on this, and I need to update this with... Who is this? This is University of Maryland. Blake, I'm begging for your conversation. I miss you.
I feel like is it University of Maryland Smith?
Is it? Hang on. Because it's the Robert H. Smith School of Business. Is it? How do you?
There's so much going on.
It's So is it like a sub school? I don't know.
All good. I think University of Maryland's gonna be fine. But I think it is like the Smith something or another because
Maryland
they call
Smith
out.
Research. Yeah,
there you go.
University of Maryland Smith Research. Is that how you would Smith Research?
It's strange because in the blurb, right, it calls it Smith Management Professor.
Smith Management.
Is
this? Yeah, this is weird because it's coming out of a. This is like a business.
At the business school, right? It sounds like it.
It sounds like it, but I mean, like this is totally healthcare human factors right here.
Yeah, it's
which
funny
always
because they give like a, what do you call it? An example that's very business oriented to kick off the article, and it seems like this particular school has been studying rudeness in business, and this is like an additional application. But it's a psychology paper they're publishing in.
Yeah,
and this seems like psych research. That's very cool. See, the world's very, very much human factors all over the place, even in the business schools.
Yes, I do love how human factors is everywhere. Okay, I'm just... Where did I find this originally? Hold on. I feel like I found this somewhere. Was this Science Daily that I found this?
This feels like a Science Daily joint, but I don't know.
Isn't it? No.
It's not a construct that I think about a lot in terms of being studied. This is
anchoring bias?
No, anchoring bias, sure, but this is really about rudeness.
Yeah.
And kind of its effects. Oh, the narrowness thing. There we go. Okay.
Yeah. Jeez. I am going to hang on. I'm going to read the abstract really quick. I'm going to see researchers from where? Researchers from where? They usually say it. Rudeness and anger. Yeah. It doesn't say where, like, how do they describe it? Hold on. Wait, I'm looking. This is, so University of Maryland broke the news, I guess. This is Robert Kirby. Professor at University of Florida Health, first assistants. Okay, so this is the acknowledgments. But how do they... You know what? They just say university. I'm not going to stress it. We're just going to say University of Maryland. It's fine.
Yeah, because they really don't talk about that. They say Journal of Applied Psychology, and then the only thing they say about the university in the article, at least, is Smith Management Professor Folk and colleagues. So I don't know. Not gonna worry. We got the link to it. We can call them out.
Yeah, call them out. We got the link below. So we got some good stuff to talk about here. We got like, what is rudeness? How is it defined? What is anchoring bias? Why it happens? That type of thing. We have a really good example of it in the medical context. And then, we have some more, I guess, applied questions or comments, about like how it might apply to other areas or different domains. And I think we have enough there to work off of.
It's interesting that because in this context, and we'll talk about it a little bit, but it's cool they offer, from the research perspective, mitigation strategies for this particular phenomenon or effect, whatever the right word is. Cool. All right. And then we have stuff down here. Wow, there's a lot of stuff down here. Very cool.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about all of it. And then, oh geez, where's do you have the one more thing?
One more thing. Yeah.
You have something.
Is there nothing down there? Wow, there's nothing down here.
Oh wait, you do have. I mean, you talked about that one 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I know what I'm doing. So,
hey, how is that coming, by the way?
Hard because the API stuff is a little bit simpler, but the authentication through LinkedIn is really tricky because there's a concept called OAuth that I know nothing about, so I'm going to have to read a bunch about it.
Hold on, back up to let everybody listening know because they can't see our show notes.
Oh, yeah.
Blake is working on a Chrome extension to schedule LinkedIn posts because that is not a thing that you can do natively in LinkedIn. So that's what he's talking about here.
Yeah, I'm doing two at once. So I'm building a guitar game basically for a Chrome extension and then trying to work on this more, applicable Chrome extension at the same time. I actually just built Pac-Man in JavaScript the other day, and I wanted to see if I could, make that accessible through Chrome and just through the extension framework. But it seems trickier than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it's fun. It's good.
Cool, man.
Tough stuff.
What did I talk about? I'm trying to think of what I talked about a couple weeks ago.
And didn't one of our lab members mention Python recently?
Python, yeah. And I forget where that came up. There was another thing.
Because that is popping up everywhere for me now.
That came up during our lab meeting. We thought that Python as a... Well, I don't want to say exactly where it was going to be, but Python as a human factors tool is an interesting topic for something. And so we wrote that down, and that's where you heard it earlier this week. And then I saw... didn't you post something in our Discord earlier?
Yeah. Because that came up because it's coming up for me wanting to learn Python and getting a little more interested in some of the data science stuff through going through Google's machine learning course. And so that particular free code camp, and Chris and I saw in this is probably, what is that icon for? Twitch. So I see on Twitch you're asking about how to learn to code. So that specific resource that I dropped in our tools channel in our Discord was from a place called Free Code Camp. And that's a pretty okay place to go and learn how to code for free. Honestly, if it's something you're really interested in, depending on the things you want to build, there's something called Scrimba that I really, really like. It's like a mix between live coding and video stuff. And it's just a really great platform that does have free and paid content. But free, yeah. So the resource I dropped was all about Pi and some of the stuff from a couple of data scientists that I've been picking their brains about how to get started to understand things a little bit better. That was all of those resources were basically where you should start if you're a beginner or if you've never done data science crunching before. So we'll be playing with Python here in the next couple of weeks.
Yay, Python!
What in the world was I going to do?
I dug a little bit into Python a while back. I think my recommendations for learning how to code are like Google is a great resource when you want to do a specific thing. I would use specific Google search terms, be like how to code for something very simple, and then try to expand on that concept, and then just. There's obviously the basics of understanding the language, and that's kind of a huge barrier to get through before you can actually get to the point where you're coding. But 95% of coding is copy and pasting and modifying that code to fit your need.
I would say 95% of it is the Googling part.
Okay,
and,
well,
like,
yeah.
reading 1,000 Stack Overflow posts to finally get where you need
Yes.
to go, and then
That's-
hoping that's the right
That's what I'm
thing,
saying.
putting your code and then breaking it, and then just being like, all right, this doesn't work at all. But yeah, I mean, that is true. The biggest thing you end up learning how to do, I think, when you try and do software development is how to Google effectively. To get like actual search results that are usable. Luckily, like especially in 2021, most documentation for a lot of popular software development packages is really, really extensive and super good for anything JavaScript based or like modern web based. So it's kind of easy to get started, and then easier to get stuck in a rabbit hole somewhere. But that's the fun.
Yeah. Yes. Coding. Fun stuff.
Love it.
Let's see. If you're hanging out with us, stick around. We're gonna be going, I guess we're live already, but we're gonna be doing the episode here in about 10 minutes. I think our show notes good. Did we get the blurb all good to go? And
yeah, I think so.
Blurb's good. We got the it came from is good. One more thing is good. So now we're just hanging out. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Here we go. Cool.
Yeah.
I had like 3 one more things pop into mind, so I'm trying to make sure that
Just
I actually write them down.
Write them down. We'll carry them into the next couple weeks.
Here we go.
There
we go. That's the name of that.
Man, I need to update the show notes. Okay, hold on. Why don't I do that while we're doing this? Maybe Blake can stall for time now because I need to do some show notes stuff.
But luckily for me, Kristen asked another question. So, are you guys going to Baltimore for HFES? I would say that it is doubtful for me, at least. I don't know, Nick, if you're planning to go this year.
I'm hoping to. So I no longer have the support I once had to go. We'll kind of see how the stars align with that one, but I'm really hopeful. If anything, we'll cover it virtually. I would really like to be there in person, though. So we'll see, but we'll try to get y'all. We will get you some coverage of it some way. That's
absolutely. I mean, we seem to have lucked out with that before.
Yeah.
I want to make a mental note for us. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to write it down. Because we probably need to go ahead and start reaching out about that stuff.
Yeah, we should.
I actually don't know when HFES is. Is it going to be in October like always?
October, yeah. And
Yeah,
the
bummer.
registration just opened up, so.
Bummer. Yeah, that's cool. Kristen, are you planning to go?
Let's see.
Pythoning.
What was I doing? Oh, right. I was, what should a student...
It's kind of a bummer too because I do like Maryland. I think Elise has friends out there, or was that in Boston? Either way, so it's a fun town.
Is yours, Blake, is your concern more scheduling issues or is it more like means?
Means support
Okay.
for it.
Yeah.
Because I just can't out of pocket it this year.
That's where I'm at too. See, this is okay. So really quick, if you are listening and know somebody who wants to sponsor the show, that would allow us to go pretty easily. A show sponsor would change that very significantly. So if you know somebody, a company or something that wants to get the word out about, human factors positions, they're hiring for, or even a product or something that somebody might want human factors professionals to hear about, consider becoming a show sponsor. There's a couple ways you can get in touch with us about that. You can reach out to us, go on our Patreon. That's where you would subscribe from. But that's a way that we would for sure be able to go, is that show sponsorship. But and we'd be able to go to others too, which is other conferences, I should say. That'd be nice.
It would. Luckily for us too, hopefully a bunch of people that we know will go to these conferences. So regardless, we should be able to grab some kind of coverage, or that's the desire, right?
Yep.
Bring it to the pub.
Like I said, one way or the other, we will get you coverage. Just whether or not we'll have all the fun interviews like we normally do, that's kind of the deciding factor, right? I mean, we can try, but being there is something different because you can just kind of grab somebody.
Yeah.
So
I do want to try and go to Kai next year. I've kind of put that on my whiteboard.
Kai would be so much fun.
My thing.
My dream is so CES is more tech, but I do want to cover it from the human factors perspective because there's a lot of really cool stuff.
Oh, it'd be so fun to go to CES and do stuff like this. Yeah.
Show sponsor. Yeah. Let everybody know.
I do feel like the bigger ones like that, it gets a little bit tougher because they probably have proper press passes and stuff like that we'd have to kind of figure out and get around.
Proper press.
Yeah, but I think we've only done kind of the HFES, the local type stuff. So it'd just be a different ball game. Worth looking into, see what it's like.
I could swing it. I can do press. That's fine. I've applied for press passes before with other organizations and got them no problem with less credentials than we have here. So I wouldn't worry about it.
There we go.
I would not worry about that. Let's see. Yeah, HFES, it'd be really cool if we could get half our lab or all of our lab to go to HFES this year and just, have a whole team covering it, right? Because there's so much. That's the thing about HFES is there's so much stuff there.
Oh, it's insane. You can't even go to all of it, and it's such a bummer because I think since the first time we went together on the podcast, it's continually gotten a little more engaging in the contents. I don't know, things I'm more personally interested in at this point in my career than it has been in the past or when I started Human Factors.
They are certainly trying over there at HFES, and I think we have good relations with HFES.
Well, and Ergo X is maybe the coolest thing on the planet.
That was so much fun.
I didn't even know that was real until we went and we were just going to it. That was an epic time.
It was very cool.
Quite enjoyed the stuff they were doing.
Yes, good point. If you have a student, if you are a student and want to take advantage of that student discount, I highly recommend it. Especially, and this is something that I'll mention during the "It Came From" segment, but that's one thing that you should be doing in your senior year before you go out is going to conferences and applying for jobs. And that is a really great way to do it at the conference itself because you get to meet face to face with the people, and I can't stress how important that is because then you can sit and talk with them, and you run into them while you're there, and it's just it's a thing. So yeah, that'd be highly recommend for any students who are on the fence about going. I'd say
there's also that capability to interview with people and real companies too, and that's a big deal because you could just you could practice with somebody who's actually a professional in the field.
Yep, it's
first job that way.
Pretty undeniable. All right, hey, we got a minute here before we go live. Do you have your Audacity up ready to record?
I don't. So
look at me, I'm on top of it for once. Look
yeah, I know. You beat me to it. All right. Hello?
Hi.
Perfect. Okay. That's annoying. It comes out of that sound box, but that's all right.
Yuckers. All right. Let's see here. We don't really have any programming notes. We do have our deep dive.
30
all
seconds.
right. Thanks for the 30-second warning. Hey, everybody, if you are sticking around with us, stick around just a little bit longer. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back to start the show right after that break, and it'll be a good time. So stick with us, hang out, and we'll see you in just over a minute. Just wait, it's about a minute. Anyway, we'll see you in a sec. Bye.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is episode 211. We're recording this live on July 1st, 2021, and this is Human Factors Cast. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I'm joined today by Mr. Blake Arnsdorff.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for the bongo drums intro. That was sick.
Man, there was a lot going on. I had to turn everything off, and I forgot to record, and there was a lot. So sorry about the drums, guys. Anyway, welcome to the show. Just a quick programming note, we do have our latest deep dive that is live now on algorithms and whether or not it can predict your brain preferences. That's a lot of fun. Those deep dives are awesome to go. They're great companion pieces to the podcast. And we'll have one for this episode as well. So be sure to check out our website for that. Human Factors Cast Digital Media Lab. That's open for business. We got quite a few members. Welcome to our newest member, Yvette. So we have a couple spots left, and there's some really interesting things going on in the lab that we're not quite ready to share. But if that at all interests you, if you want to get involved in any way, we do have a couple spots open. So please reach out to us. Let us know kind of what you're interested in, and we can try to find our the best way that you can help us out and help you out too. It's all a symbiotic relationship. We want to make sure that the lab is a fun place to be. Anyway, I think that's it. We know what you're here for. You're here for Human Factors news, right? We stop.
What a show.
We stopped for 1 week, and I forget how to press buttons. This is the part of the show all about human factors news. This is where we talk about everything related to the field of human factors. This could be anything. We got some medical in there. We got some psychology in there. As long as it relates to the field of human factors, it is fair game for us to sit here and chat about on the show. Blake, what do we have this week?
All right, so up only this week, when rudeness becomes a matter of life and death. So how rudeness narrows your mindset and can lead to medical mistakes. So have you ever been interrupted by a colleague in a meeting and found yourself replaying that event in your head all day, even after you left work? Probably. Minor rude events like this happen all the time, and you may be surprised by the magnitude of the effects they have on our decision-making and our daily functioning. In fact, recent research suggests that in certain situations, incidental rudeness like this can actually be deadly. So in research forthcoming in the Journal of Applied Psychology, Smith management professor Folk and colleagues looked at how experiencing rudeness amplifies the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias can happen in a lot of different situations, but it's very common in medical diagnosis and negotiations. So if you go to a doctor and say, I think I'm having a heart attack, that can become an anchor for the doctor to focus on trying to fix that diagnosis or understand that diagnosis, even if you're just experiencing something like indigestion. Across 4 studies, researchers found that both witnessed and directly experienced rudeness seemed to have a similar anchoring effect across situations. And basically what they were observing is a narrowing effect. So rudeness narrowing a person's perspective that narrowed the perspective that they couldn't see outside of that particular situation, leaving them susceptible to dangerous situations, in this case, for decision making. So, Nick, this is really an intersection of a lot of different psychological principles, but the biggest thing being that rudeness can have a severe effect depending on context. Now, is this something you've ever thought about before?
Kind of passively. I have thought. So let me just back up and talk about the anchoring bias. So I've thought about this with medical diagnoses. So whenever I go into the doctor, I only describe symptoms. I don't describe what I think it is based on what I've WebMD'd before I go, because I don't want to anchor them, and I want their expert opinion. That's why I'm there. I actively try to avoid that. But whether or not, rudeness affects that anchoring, I had never thought about before. And, we were talking about this before the show. This is one of those things. It's like, I think this comes out of a business school, but this is like psychology research. And it was just interesting to see how human factors is kind of pervasive across multiple disciplines. But I do want to back up here. Let's talk about what we mean when we say rudeness and what we mean when we are talking about the anchoring bias, right? So rudeness, that's kind of this display of disrespect, kind of ignoring social norms, or some common etiquette that you might experience that goes against cultural expectations and basically kind of pushes boundaries of these interactions of accepted behavior, right? So that's what's going on when we define rudeness. So something that's not culturally acceptable, I guess, like, I don't know, calling somebody a name that's not kind. You can imagine what that is, but and then you pair that with anchoring bias, and let's talk about anchoring bias really quick. So this is a cognitive bias that allows us or causes us to rely too heavily on that first piece of information that we receive about something. The example that you gave about heart attack, right? That's a example of anchoring in a medical context. Someone comes in, they say, I think I'm having a heart attack. And so the doctor then may get fixated on that idea of this patient having a heart attack, and they then might be suffering from another type of bias, confirmation bias, to basically make sure that that is the correct diagnosis. And so they're looking for things that fit that. So they're looking for anchoring, and then they're kind of trying to fit everything to that. And then let's talk about the other example. You said the Mississippi River example, right? 500 miles. You're anchoring them to that 500 miles when in reality it might be much bigger, it might be much smaller, and that anchor becomes an influence for how long you feel like that river actually is, right? So there's a couple things going on here, and then kind of the that's what I'm looking for. The confluence of the two is what we're talking about in this paper, right? I'm going to pass it back over to you, Blake. Have you ever thought of this, and do you use any, or have you thought about anchoring in the medical context before?
So I've definitely thought about anchoring, because that's something you read in like any early, Kahneman and Tversky paper where they're really focused on decision making. And I did have a professor early on who was very interested in, medical errors and what it had to do with, patient decision making along with doctor decision making in the operating room. So I've heard of the idea, but I guess I had never really thought about it in a real world context, like outside of an operating room, like me as a patient coming into a doctor's office and being able to immediately bias somebody by, my assumption that I'm having a heart attack or whatever, being able to like kind of color their view of whatever is going on with me, which to some degree you have to rely on. And I think in the medical world, it actually makes sense that it's so prolific, because if you think about kind of how healthcare ends up really working, typical doctors, like if you're going to a typical big box doctor's office, right? They only have so much time they can actually spend with patients. So they've got to be in and out and making certain decisions as fast as they can. So if you hear like, oh, I think this is wrong with me, trying to investigate that is a likely way to go based on like time and decision making you have to make to be able to get somebody either to more help if they need it or out of the doctor's office and on their way. So I think it's funny that this is definitely a dangerous consequence in the medical field, but I think it's a pretty intuitive one, that when you present a piece of information to someone, they can tend to latch onto that or let that color their judgments as they move forward.
Yeah, I want to talk about briefly two things. Well, one, the Mississippi River, just for anyone listening who doesn't know how long it is, I Googled this for everyone's convenience, I guess. It's 2,318 miles. So you can see where that 500 mile as an anchor is actually really impacting how long you think it is. Because if you think 500 miles, you might think, oh, it's the length of the 5 between Southern California and Northern California. That's my frame of reference, right? And so, or San Diego in the Bay Area, right? That's 500 miles. Anyway, so that's like my anchor, and I'm like, oh yeah, that seems reasonable. It goes up the country, Anyway, you can see how that anchors your frame of thought when you think about the river as a whole, when in actuality it's like 4 times that. And so you might be thinking, oh, is it actually shorter than that? I don't know. So I do want to talk about anchoring bias and why it actually happens, right? So there's some debate as to why it happens, but it's deeply rooted in sort of human psychology and cognition. And some of the more recent evidence suggests that it happens kind of depending on where the anchoring information comes from. So we can become anchored to all different types of information or values of pieces of information, whether we come up with them ourselves or are provided with them by others. But basically, we react to them for different reasons. And so, if we come up with something ourselves that's almost borderline confirmation bias, but then when it comes from others, it's more of that anchoring bias. So again, we kind of don't know exactly why it happens, but we do know it happens, and it has different sources there.
And I'm sure, like most things in psychology, there's a large interaction effect there. Because if you think about that, you could, maybe you just trust source of information more, so you'll always believe or anchor yourself in that just because of your prior experience, or you believe in, let's say, medical science or something like that. So I think there's probably a little bit of confirmation bias that leads you to anchors that you actually believe in. Or that you focus on, or if it's data oriented, right? Like sometimes when you put statistics or numbers to things, people are more likely to believe it anyway, without doing any extra research, which is kind of, again, in that same line of the Kahneman and Tversky work of providing people with data and then seeing how it affects their decision making, which is still mind boggling that like science from the psychology science from like the 80s still like it colors what we do today in terms of psychology research.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about kind of the concepts behind it. Blake, do you want to break down how they kind of tested this theory out?
Yeah, so to break down how they were seeing this and kind of replicate it in the lab, what they did is the researchers ran actually a medical simulation with anesthesiology students, and the residents had to diagnose and treat a patient, but right before they go into the simulation where they're going to treat this patient, they're given an anchoring piece of information about the patient's condition or a suggestion about what they may experience. So the suggestion was typically incorrect, and it served as the quote unquote anchor for the study. And throughout the exercise, the simulator, during the person who was facilitating this, provided feedback that the Amblin was not the suggested diagnosis, but instead something else. So you had this conflict between what a resident was told before they went in to actually diagnose a patient, and then your patient or your confederate in this case, kind of giving information that was contrary to that, if you will. And then in some of these iterations, of course, to do a little bit of kind of like between subject study here, the researchers had one doctor enter the room and act rudely toward another doctor in front of residents to see how that would actually color the situation as well. So we got two things going on. We have an instance of an anchoring effect from an outside party, but then we have the introduction of rudeness to see how that kind of affects people's overall interaction with patients.
Right. And the answer to the question, does rudeness impact the way that patients are treated because of this anchoring effect, is yes, is what the study is suggesting, right?
Yeah.
So basically they're saying that rudeness, experiencing this rude doctor would make you more likely to anchor because it kind of narrows your perspective. And the researchers explored these 2 tasks, right, that have been showed to expand your perspective, which were perspective taking and information elaboration. So, they were looking at those 2 things and found that the rudeness actually makes you more likely to anchor.
This really makes me want to ask my doctor questions about how their day's been before we get started.
Right. Yeah. So this is news you can use, if you will, right? Take it to your doctor's office and ask them, "Hey, how's your day going?" Be polite, and that's why you should always be polite to your healthcare professionals. I think that's a great one there, Blake. Yeah, I don't know. So the answer is yes, it does impact it. I don't know. Do we want to get into some of these other insights here, Blake?
So just to like really show the antithesis or the thesis of what really happened here. So the big overall takeaway is, like Nick said, there is a correlation between these two actions, kind of having the rudeness and the anchor kind of narrowing your focus. So what the researchers really have found is when experiencing rudeness prior to the simulation starting, the particular resident would then keep treating the wrong thing, even though the person in the simulation or the Confederate was giving them plenty of markers to say, like, actually, it's something else. It has nothing to do with that, like, anchoring effect that you had before you came in, and potentially this like effect of narrowing your perception. So that's really interesting. They're able to like get both to work together and then show in basically a pretty narrow study this can actually happen in a medical context and have consequence. So it's a strange thing to see this kind of play out across studies, because this paper is starting to make a lot more sense based on where this school is, because they mentioned this happens in negotiation technique as well. So seeing like a negative effect, and then also seeing how like anchoring based on somebody's like suggestion or something like that could happen in the business world, and now we're seeing it replicated in a kind of a more serious context, or a more deadly context in some cases.
Yeah, I do want to talk. You kind of opened up the Pandora's box here, but I do want to talk a little bit about real world applications of anchoring. I mean, like salary negotiation, right? That's something that you can use to anchor.
Yeah.
And depending on who says a number first, that anchors the other party to the expectations. So, you could say something incredibly high, and that anchors them to where you are. It might not get you the job, but it will let you know what, or let them know what you're thinking, and so they'll start to think about what around that range is appropriate. Likewise, you could let them set the anchor first, and it might be a really big lowball. And it's like, well, do I take it because it's a job and I need money? Like, it's so use anchoring in your everyday life, right? When you go to negotiate a used car sale, right? That's another instance where they anchor it. The sticker on the window is an anchor in itself, where it says, $5,000 or whatever. Then that might be much higher than they're willing to part with it, but they put that anchor there so that way you can determine whether or not that is a appropriate price. So think about anchoring in your everyday life. We'll talk about some applications of anchoring in just a minute, but I do want to mention that this anchoring effect with the rudeness, this was actually replicated across several different tasks. You mentioned negotiations, but general knowledge tasks as well. And throughout all these different studies, the results were consistent, where rudeness makes it more likely that a person will get anchored to the first suggestion they hear. So if you combine that with the other applications that I just said, be rude to your prospective employers, then they'll be more likely to anchor themselves to your expected salary. Don't do that. That's really bad.
It won't work like you think it will.
Oh, yeah, man. and same thing. Like it's this weird thing, right? Where if you need something, you can't be rude. Yet if they are experiencing rudeness from an outside source that is not you, they might still be more receptive to your anchor. It's all very fascinating, and I'm sure somebody will figure out a way to optimize this and take advantage of it. But that's for another time. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to talk about here, Blake, before we get into some of these other application areas?
No, I mean the biggest parts from here, because I think you've done a good job helping it make it clear, like there's different types of anchoring that exist in your daily life, whether we're kind of cognizant of it or paying attention to it. But something that did come up throughout the paper is like, what do we do in situations like this where anchoring and then in combination with rudeness can have really, drastic effects, like in the medical world or even in your own, negotiations for job stuff. And one big thing that they continue to bring up was this capability to try and do perspective taking. So actually trying to put yourself in the shoes of the person that's talking to you, and then really kind of think from their perspective to help you elaborate your worldview a little bit more. And I don't know if looks like the researchers were actually able to find that both behaviors could help to counteract the effect of rudeness and anchoring by doing these kind of perspective taking tasks or adding these in, which is really interesting. And it probably takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to put yourself through those kind of things in daily life to come out of anchoring effects or like a rude experience impacting how you interact with other people. But it's cool to see that there's actual mitigation strategies in the research as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about just a couple more examples in the real world, right? You have like in the courtroom. You have these examples where when convictions are handed out, lawyers are going to try very hard to make sure to get that meeting directly after a lunch break because they're far more likely to give lesser sentences or allow people to go on parole. So, I mean, that's kind of the anchoring swing judgments. And then you have sort of this speculation about like how might this affect self-driving cars, right? We talked about that example at the very top about when somebody cuts you off on the freeway and you are finding yourself seething, down the line. Did we talk about that, or is that's in the actual article? I don't know if we talked about that in the blurb, but anyway, they mentioned that in the article. And so, what might that look like for a self-driving vehicle or a fully autonomous vehicle? Basically, if we think somebody's cutting us off, are we more likely to be upset at that other person because them cutting you off was the anchor, but it in fact was not them, it was the self-driving technology. So there's that kind of speculation as well. I don't know, those are fun applications, I think.
Yeah, the self-driving car one, and even some of the like other implications for just automation or machine learning are interesting because it becomes like if there are anchors that are put in there or if there are actions that happen in the self-driving car instance that make you or trigger you to think that it's a rudeness, when in fact maybe that was a life-saving maneuver for the person in the car. It kind of gets at that whole problem of like putting self-driving cars into play in like a slow fashion where you're dealing with like manual and self-driving at the same time. So you're trying to interpret interactions of what you assume is a human, but it's not. It's like automation making decisions based on programming. So I think that leads itself to, I think, have probably human bias inside of the automation development, potentially. But then too, you kind of have to, assess the situation as like the human driver. Like, did my car just cut that other car off? And understand like behavior behind you that you may not be in control of anymore. So I think it adds a lot of different things.
Yeah, wave at them and say, "Oh, I'm sorry.
It's automated.
It's not me." Like throw up your hands, both of them, and show it's not me. I do want to talk about this in sort of the medical context again. Kind of these application areas of rudeness meets anchoring bias, and I want to talk about specifically like what might this look like if there's some sort of anchoring bias check in the software or programs that these medical professionals use that are creating the diagnosis. Is there something that we can do, or is there some sort of anti-bias or anchoring bias check that kind of is used to complete these diagnosis negotiations or other similar work? Like, what kind of checks are in place in the software to make sure that you're not being that your diagnosis is to the best of your ability, and like how do you counter sort of that anchoring bias, right? That's interesting question. I don't have the answer to. Any speculation from your end, Blake?
I think it's really hard, and that's so stupid to say. So I do have an example of why this is kind of making my brain twist a little bit. I'm going to talk about it at a high level because I want to protect the person that it's related to. But a very close friend of mine, he spent all of his career working in the medical world, in which he developed a lot of different types of technologies and worked on them. And he came to see that there was really good software implementations for specific things that you do in the medical world related to diagnosis. But what could often get in the way is doctors' prior experience and it not being in line with how the machine worked. And so there's this mismatch between I'm the human, the doctor that understands the science behind all of this, and I've been doing this job for a long time, versus I've got a machine that's, powered by machine learning and early AI and is proven to be a very good diagnostic tool. But you have this kind of combative nature between, technology and human perception. So I think a lot of this stuff does exist in some form or fashion in medical technology. It's trying to keep humans' perspective in check. They can be very, very tough based on prior experience, how you anchor in situations, or experiences you've had in the past that have colored your mental model of how things work. So I think software, it's kind of hard in the medical world, because I think there is a lot of really good software that exists out there, but I know it's also very prone to use errors and things like that are also related to bad design. But I don't know, Nick, from your perspective, where do you see maybe checks for this kind of stuff?
I don't know. That's an interesting question, and something that smarter people than me are dedicating their life's research to.
Yeah.
If I were to speculate, I would imagine there's like some questions that don't necessarily reveal what they're checking for in the software. Like, I don't know, was it, how rate the doctor's mood, where, it's not necessarily transparent what the software is asking that for. And I think that could be built into a workflow throughout the day, like where something just comes up randomly, and it just, maybe doctors have like a pager or something on them, and they say, oh, my mood is happy face, my mood is sad face, my mood is angry face, and there's just some way to correlate that to when they're diagnosing these patients' conditions, and whether or not maybe there's some correlation through machine learning or something like that can predict exactly based on a doctor's mood or other, periodic check-in questions. Although that's a lot to ask of a doctor. I don't know. I'm just,
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. And you know me, I love an invasive measure. And we've talked about on the show, I think at least 2 times, about various algorithms that are out there. I think they're related to smartphone AI assistants that can kind of analyze your mood based off of your voice. So using something like that to kind of have a passive pulse check on you throughout the day to see how your decision making is, and that does get into a very weird place, doesn't it? Very quickly, or maybe that's just where my mind goes. Is it's tracking your decision making across patients based off of an analysis of something like your phone's decision making about how you're feeling, and that's your work performance and stuff like that. So it gets into a very sci-fi place, but I think there's a lot of merit to it.
Yeah, it could be cool to see, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, where all this information about a person is being used for medical diagnoses, or these sorts of algorithms that go on behind the scenes. You could also play those into medical professionals who are actually diagnosing these things. So yeah, it's interesting to think about how software can be used. I do want to get into this next question here about whether or not we can use human factors principles to decrease rudeness in the workplace, or is that in the domain of IO psych? And if we can use human factors, what does that look like? I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about it. Anything else that comes to mind there, Blake?
This is hard, because I think I don't know how to approach this, so I'm going to try and do it as appropriately as I can, I guess.
Do it.
So I value a lot of my colleagues who do not always present me things in the most unrude fashion possible. And I think it's led me to have a thicker skin to be able to produce and take types of critique in a much better way and make better products and separate myself from my work. So I think removing some rudeness from the workplace, there's some of that I wouldn't want it to be removed, because it's been invaluable to me and my growth. And also some of my, I think some of my own behaviors can be perceived as rude because I'm very straight to the point. So I really don't know if removing rudeness in the workplace, if that completely changes how people interact. Because I think I have a lot of positive relationships where there are people who know me very well and I know them very well, and we can be kind of tough with each other to get to where we need to go to like push a product forward or like brainstorm ideas without it being professionally or unprofessional, I guess is the way that I would put it. I'm sure there are benefits of it because of this whole narrowingness of mindset, and not be for people who cannot basically get themselves out of that or like take information and look at it in a different way if somebody's been rude to them. I do think there is value in figuring out how to put that into place. But I would imagine, Nick, you've got some ideas for different tactics or principles that you think you could interject into the workplace to either reduce or change how rudeness impacts people.
Oh man, just to talk with HR. I don't know. Like, I feel like Kristen makes a good point in chat here. Non-formal meetings between people to discuss behavior could potentially help, right? Whether or not they're positive or negative, and just say what works for people and those individual differences, right? What works for somebody may not work for somebody else. I don't know. There's, like I said, there are people that are smarter than me that are devoting their life's work to this. I think we kind of talked a little bit about, intervention methods that may track additional metrics that might help with things like the diagnosis and the accuracy of that. But I feel like there's also things that you could do to be or to intervene to be less rude in the workplace too, right? Like there's certainly like meditation methods that doctors can employ, or there's like standards that institutions can make mandatory across their staff, to where if anybody says something derogatory, then they're out. I mean, there's a staffing crisis right now, but like there's that type of thing, and the staffing crisis is a whole separate anyway. There's ways about it. I think human factors can help.
I think it's a really great point. I do, to be completely blunt, I do think there is a difference between occupational rudeness that has some kind of benefit because it's part of your personality and the bluntness in how you do things, but there's also like, don't be a dick. Yeah. And there's a lot of that. There's some definite gray area. I love the idea about the meditation thing, because call back to last week's episode, I did attend a talk with one of the product designers for my Headspace, not Mindspace, Headspace. And it sounded like that has a tremendous impact in some of their work environment stuff. Like their all hands starts off with meditation.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of interesting kind of applications of things like that you could bring into the workplace. Also, I'm a big fan of exercise. So if you can find ways to interject that in the beginning or in the middle or whatever part of your day, sometimes that can change your complete brain chemistry and just turn a day around completely. So maybe that's another way to approach it.
Yeah. Very interesting article this week. Blake, any other closing thoughts on this one?
I just really liked it. It was tough because there's a lot going on here, and but I haven't revisited kind of this anchoring T&K stuff in a long, long time. I do like that this is being done from the business school perspective, and that they're thinking outside of just like the negotiating table in terms of where this can be impactful.
I agree. All right. Well, thank you to our patrons this week for selecting our topic. And thank you to our friends over at the University of Maryland for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post links to the original articles in our Slack and our Discord as we find them, as well as our weekly news roundups. So join us over there for more discussion. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, patron! Huge thank you, as always, to our patrons, and especially our honorary Human Factors Cast staff patrons. Michelle Tripp, patrons like you, keep the show running. Keep our lights on over here, and thank you so much for all of your continued support. If you want to support the show, we do have some, things that you can do, like the commercial said. We do have a show sponsor position, and we were talking about this in the pre-show. This would be tremendously helpful for us to go to conferences for additional coverage. So if you're thinking about, advertising to Human Factors professionals, reach out to us. We can get you in line there. I don't want to toot it too much. So anyway, we're gonna get into this next part of the show.
It came from.
I don't want to toot it too much.
Somebody clip that, please.
God. It's like I've not been doing this for a week. Anyway, let's switch gears and get to It Came From. This week, we actually got two really great questions from our community. One from our YouTube community and one from our Discord. And this is the part of the show where we search all over everything to bring you community topics. So fortunately, we did get, like I said, from our YouTube and Discord. So we'll go ahead and get into it here. This first one is from YouTube. This one's from Derica. And they write, "Hello, I just found your channel and I really enjoy your content." Well, thank you for the kind words. Really appreciate that. "A video that I would like to request would be about what a student should be doing within their last semester to better prepare themselves for the human factors field. Thank you." Blake, what should a student be doing in their last semester to help prepare themselves for the human factors field?
Woof. That's a good question. Definitely not things that I was doing. So one thing that I think is really important in your last semester is, and this sounds cliche, but I swear it's the truth, is to really start thinking about what your next step is. So if you are planning to go to grad school, if you're planning to try and look for that first job or whatever it's going to be, like really start putting that plan together for what those next steps are. Because that usually, if you're going to grad school, that means, filling out applications, taking tests, getting with your professors to get those awesome letters of recommendation, all that kind of stuff. And then finding a job can be even tougher. I think one really important aspect of that last semester is to make sure that you're getting the proper experience you want so that you can move forward. So finding an internship is a really invaluable thing to try and do. And that can even be, working in a new lab or taking on a new research project in a lab. There you go. Human Factors Cast has one. So that's a really, really great place to spend your time. And lastly, I would have told myself to do this, but I honestly didn't know anything about human factors until the week that I started the program. But one thing I didn't do early on, because I think in college it's easy to get lost in, not thinking too much about the professional world, just going to school, that kind of stuff. But networking and building a network of friends or colleagues or whatever you want to call them can really help. Because you never know, like down the line when somebody's, working at a place you'd like to work at and you want to know what it's like to work there, what it takes to get an interview, how invaluable that can be. Or if you end up doing a podcast or whatever the next podcast is, you can call on friends to kind of pick their brain about topics like machine learning or deep learning, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely important to network, kind of put a plan together for what you want your next steps to be, and spend some time doing some kind of work, whether it's an internship, a research project, or joining a lab. But Nick, what would you have done or what would you like to do if this was your last semester of school?
Yeah, that's a great point. So I want to approach this from two different perspectives. One, there's are you continuing your education? It's a little ambiguous here. Last semester, is it last semester of undergrad, last semester of grad school? I think there's very different steps that you take. Some overlap, but I want to talk about it from two perspectives. So one, if this is your last semester of undergrad, it may be too late to get into grad school for the following year, but you take a year off, you get that experience, you get stuff to kind of buff your resume, or your CV, and you apply to schools, you take all the tests required to get into said schools, you research professors. I think there's a lot of steps that are included in that are maybe you don't think about right off the bat. Like, I had a whole spreadsheet of different logins for different institutions with different professors and different contact information for admissions and the professors themselves. And, there's a whole nerdy thing about it that it's like, what's required, a whole column for requirements. Has it been submitted yet? Has it?
You're really on it. That's amazing.
It may have gotten easier since I went to grad school, but that's kind of what I did is kind of keep track of everything that needed to be done from start to finish. And I think that's a good first step, is to categorize or to catalog what it is you need to do, and take a step back and kind of go, okay, well, where can I fill in the gaps? Do I have extracurricular activities that I can talk about or write about? Do I have this test done? Do I have that test done? Have I applied to this institution? When are the due dates? How do I prioritize those due dates? There's a lot of things that you can do from that perspective. Now, I want to move over to I am done with school, be it undergrad or grad school, doesn't matter. I think, Blake, you brought up a lot of really great points here, and I want to reiterate a couple. So you brought up the point that you are looking for an internship or some sort of experience that will help you find a position later, right? I don't think internship is always the right word for it, because you can still get positions in labs at school that can help you with research, or that help kind of solidify your role as like a lab manager or something like that. So with that, I would take a step back and almost look at the gaps that you need to fill in order to get to the place that you want to be. If you need to, let's say you want to be in a specific domain and you have no research in that domain, well, I mean, there's, like, what if it's the only school that you got accepted to? There's that problem. So try to fill in those gaps where you can. It doesn't always have to be an internship. It could be a lab on campus or virtually. Like I said earlier, we're still looking for a couple of people, so feel free to reach out. The other thing is the connection side of things and the going to conferences. And I think there are some conferences that are better than others. And I always like to mention HFES. It's a great conference for this, for students especially, because you get the opportunity to sit down at a career fair. And since pandemic's over, right? I say that sarcastically, but because we're starting to get back to normal life, the ability to sit down in front of somebody, to interact with them, and to run into them again during the conference is going to be huge. They're, especially if you're there presenting work that you've done in a lab, that is a huge benefit to people who are looking for a job, because you can get in front of these big tech companies, you can get experience interviewing, and even if you fumble one, you can just roll right into the next one and be like, okay, what did I do wrong there? I can just, improve upon it instantly. You get that feedback instantly. And you get that experience interviewing. And I think that's really valuable too. So there's some stuff you can do before you go into the workforce. It's mostly about filling gaps, making connections, and applying for what you want to do. And I would be lying if I said it was easy all the time. There are some people I know who have been looking for jobs for like months, and I don't want to discourage anybody. It's hard. But just bring your best self and apply where you can. And I don't know, it's rough. I don't want to say it's so easy a caveman could do it, because it's not. And
no, it's definitely not.
It's one of those things where it's like, just got to keep pushing until, well, even, for us, it's like, even when we had a job, let's keep pushing. Yeah. So it never stops. Unless you get comfortable and you get a company that really likes you and you're good there forever. I don't know. Like, if you're fine with static growth. Anyway, we're getting outside the bounds of the topic. So thank you for that question, Derica. Really appreciate it. Let's get into this other one here. This one's from our Discord, from Joy Ahoy. This is let's see here. I have a really general question. Right now, I'm in school for engineering, but most of my internships have entirely been in UX. And it seems like 99% of human factors jobs are in UX. What does the human factors field look like outside of digital, web, and mobile UX? As someone from Canada, are there any opportunities for engineering human factors jobs outside of defense and aerospace? And what do those look like? Blake, what do you think?
So there is, I really love this thread. So shout out to the Discord for just being an awesome place for human factors people. But the big thing that I see, at least in the States, in terms of who's hiring human factors people and where human factors engineering specifically has a lot of potential for pull, is the medical field. It is a place that is like really doing an overhaul and is doing some serious hiring of HF professionals, UX professionals, the whole gamut to change how products are made, change existing medical record technology, just tackle really kind of legacy problems that have always been there. And I think you would find in the medical field that HF, like being an HF practitioner, is highly valued, since there's requirements by the FDA, at least in the States. I'm assuming there's probably something similar in Canada that requires you to actually go through a very formalized process for medical device testing, in which a human factors person has to be involved. So there's a lot of opportunity there for sure. I do want to highlight one of our, I'm not going to call them out by name because I don't have their permission to, but I do want to highlight a comment that's made in our Discord Slack about this. And really it's what do you enjoy doing and what drove you to do human factors or get into engineering in the first place? Because I would bet that there is probably some kind of technology, be it like a software solution or a physical product, that exists in that space that you could try to get your foot in the door somewhere. I'm sure there's a lot more. There's plenty of more context of where, human factors engineering is important. But in terms of being outside of just purely software or like mobile design, I do think the medical field is a place where you can get experience in both.
Yeah, I answered this one in the Discord just to make sure, because this was asked a couple weeks ago here, and we had a break last week. But I do want to kind of restate what my answer was. But basically, yes, I think defense, aerospace, medical, those are the big three. And so, you're on the right track. They're on the right track in thinking that that's kind of the human factors sector. But I think there's more to it than that. And it's like finding a domain that's interesting to you. That's the other Discord member that you won't say their name, but they're quite active in there, and we love them. So, I will say, it's weird to say a blanket statement like human factors can be applied everywhere, but I think that's true. And it's just a matter of finding that niche of where you can apply it, and whether or not you have the right experience for it, right? I listed off a bunch of kind of niche domain areas that, aren't typically associated with human factors work. And I know folks that are in other industries like film and theme parks who, you might not typically think of that as human factors, but they certainly have applications in those areas. And, I definitely listed off a couple industries here. I'm looking for it. Hang on. I got to pull it up because I didn't pull it into this. Let's see here. So I mentioned that there are a couple different industries in which you could look at, and they were zoo or theme parks, public space layouts, teledildonics. If you don't know what that is, go Google it. Human factors of training materials, so like written or digital tools or videos. So maybe pick any way to display information. You can do a deep dive on it. So like color, font, loading screens. This is like research threads, right? There's like self-care medical devices, and that's kind of the medical field, right? Band-Aids or any other device that you use on yourself. There's a lot of human factors research that goes into that. Medical device design. Children's products are another huge thing that could use human factors, because children, interact with the world differently than we do, and so there's special considerations that need to be taken into the product's design for that specific for specific age groups. Even, it breaks down, 0 to 3 months is going to have something different than 18 to 24 months. So that's another interesting aspect. So I think there's a variety of different industries in which human factors can be applied to that may not necessarily, you might not necessarily think of human factors first, but I think defense, aerospace, medical are the big three where there's like government standards that need to be applied.
Just two more real quick that I think are growing very fast. And so you see a lot of positions that are like UX or like researcher, but I think a lot of times there's a couple of emerging industries that like they're definitely looking for somebody with like true human factors experience. And that's in automation technology in cars, and also just wearable technology in general. Understanding a lot more of context of use and the impact of context of use for things like everything from like a Fitbit to like we talked about medical, like glucose monitors and stuff that you wear all the time. So there's a lot of impact that you can have in those two fields, and they're kind of on the edge of, it's growing technology, so it's not something as established as like medical or defense or anything like that. But from my perspective, and it all depends on this person's perspective, that's kind of a fun place to be because you could be early in your career, defining what a space looks like.
Yes, agree. All right, let's get into this next part of the show. It's called One More Thing. It really needs no introduction because it's just one more thing that Blake and I get to talk about. Blake, what's your one more thing this week?
Oh, man. So today is my first return to playing video games, and I've got to say, I've really enjoyed playing Dark Alliance. It's like it's a D&D, or it's a game that's based off of a D&D kind of like storytelling, and it's just a silly hack and slash game, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. What's the game? It's hack and slash. It's deep story.
It's not as deep as I expected. It's kind of like, it feels a lot like Diablo 3 if you've ever played any of those games. So you take on some specific role, and then you're just like, you're fighting monsters and bosses and stuff. It's just a lot of fun.
Any cool human factors UX stuff going on with it?
There is a lot of kind of end user experience problems up front that you have to kind of get past and be willing to download patch after patch. It's had a lot of like login credentials issues, which have been really interesting. But luckily, this is why I don't play games on the first day anymore, because it just like, it sucks. It's not a fun experience. Like usually it's not ready to go. Software development for games is too fast. So it's kind of one of those things that's been nice to read about some of the problems, and like the massive amount of, server farm crashes and stuff like that because of the D&D name that's attached to the game.
There's a whole subreddit devoted to patient gamers, which it's like, there's so many benefits to waiting, right? The only drawback is that you're not part of the conversation, right? So if anyone's talking about it, you might have to, step out, but you do get like all the patches, all the DLC, when it's fully out, it's usually on sale for less than what it was when it came out, and you can usually grab them on great deals. So yes, waiting is better if you can do it. Otherwise, I know, and I don't want to like harp on anybody who jumps on the games right away, because being part of that conversation and keeping up with, your favorite streamers who are playing with it and that type of thing is that's part of it. And so I don't blame anybody for doing that. It's just that, there's a lot of benefits to waiting too. So my one more thing this week is I bought this a couple months ago. It's my Fitbit, and it's the Fitbit Sense. And it took me like 2 or 3 weeks before I realized that the button on the side of this thing is not a real button. Let me show it to you. So for those on the video, you can actually see it looks like a button. It's actually just a recessed indent instead of an outward button. But it gives you that tactile sense that you're pressing something because of the way it's indented. And it was interesting to me they make it feel like a button. But you're really just pushing in on the side, and the plastic is bending on the side to press a button on the inside, and it's a way, I'm sure, to keep water out or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good move.
But I just found it really interesting, and the care that went into making an indent that feels like something that was outwardly being pressed really surprised me. And like I said, it took me a couple weeks to even figure that out.
Oh man, it took me like a year to understand that the quote unquote button on my iPhone is the same thing. It's not a button. It's just tactical feedback you're getting. First time it died, I was like, oh man, I broke the button. Oh wait, it's not a button. That's pretty cool. It's like it's smart design because it's doing it for some other purpose. Functional breakdown doesn't happen as fast on non-mechanical parts, so stuff like that is just interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you guys think of the news story this week. You can hang out with us on our Slack or Discord, get to us on any of our social channels. You can visit our official website and sign up for our newsletter to stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you want to support the show, if you like what you hear, you want to support the show, or, any of that stuff, I guess there's a couple ways you can do that. One, leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this thing, if it allows it. If not, you can tell your friends about us. That helps us grow the show quite a bit. And if you're able to, consider supporting us on Patreon. That actually really does help keep the lights on over here, and help us go to things like conferences and do all the coverage there. So think about that. That's what I'll leave you with. And as always, links to all of our socials, our websites, in the description of this episode. Mr. Blake Arnsdorff, thank you for being on the show tonight. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk about rudeness?
If you want to talk about rudeness talk about rudeness in the Discord Slack with me. I'm at Blake in there, and then you can reach out and say rude things to me on any social media channel through at Don't Panic UX.
He's such a rude boy. As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me streaming on Twitch every Tuesday at 1 Pacific for office hours, and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning in to Human Factors Cast. Until next time, it depends. All right, everyone. We are not doing a post show tonight. Blake's got to run. But thank you for hanging out with us tonight. If you've been hanging out with us, if you are watching later, then I don't know why you didn't just watch the shortened stream. But anyway, thanks for that, I guess, if you want to watch the full show. I don't really have much else to say. Blake, is there anything you want to mention before we head out?
Yes, actually, there's a comment in our Twitch chat from Kristen. Kristen, will you do me a favor? And if you're comfortable with it, send me your resume and let me take a look at it. Because I will provide you feedback if that's something you're interested in.
Yes, good point. All right. Same here. We can certainly do that. All right. For anyone in our lab as well, check that out. That's another benefit of being in the lab.
For sure. Yeah. Because that's a Patreon perk, but people in the lab absolutely do that for free.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. We're going to get going. Blake, you have a wonderful evening with your pupper. And
absolutely.
And I'll see you next week. Yeah, next week, right?
Yep, next week.
But not the week after.
Yeah.
Or not the week after that, but next week.
Yep, next week.
All right.
And then maybe the podcasting all again.
We'll see. We'll see what the schedule looks like this summer. It's going to be a little weird because I'm moving soon and Blake's got other stuff going on. So anyway, we'll stick around, but we're gone for now. Bye.